Hi guys, and welcome back to the Red Mist podcast with me, Seshadri, and welcome to Raw Reactions from Newcastle United versus Liverpool, a match that's very close to my heart. For reasons if you don't know, it's because I lived in Newcastle. Newcastle's kind of become like my second home, my second team. So yeah, St James's Park, first place where I've watched a Premier League game. Not even Anfield. Anfield came much later, and I did watch a Champions League game in Anfield. I still haven't watched a Premier League game in Anfield. But that day will come hopefully sometime in the future. But St James's Park, Newcastle United, special place in my heart. Newcastle as a city, beautiful city. Again, special place in my heart as well. But this game is, as you can see, it's emotionally quite. It means quite something to me. But before I do get into this episode again, just like I think with the Crystal Palace game, I didn't have a preview episode for this because one, the games are coming too close, and second, it was kind of a silly thing because in India it comes technically on the 31st of December. I thought the game was actually on 31st of December when I forgot that because of the time difference, Google showed me 31st of December, even though I didn't quite see that it was early morning on 31st of December in India, which kind of meant the game was on 30th, but in Britain. But that's kind of why. So I didn't quite realize it until today, and I didn't have time to do a preview episode. So unfortunately, that did not happen. But again, there's precedent to this, so it's not. It's not something I'm doing for the first time. There's a precedent with the Crystal Palace game. I think it was the Palace game. I may be wrong on that, but anyway. Jurgen Klopp, after Liverpool's 1-1 draw with West Brom, was determined to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen again today. Obviously, we could have been 5 points clear at the top, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We are only we're not 5 points clear, and Manchester United moved into second place, so they're now just 2 points behind with the same number of games played. So, could this be a Liverpool versus Man United title race? Potentially. But if we do win today, that'll be really nice. Hopefully, we don't muck this up at St James's Park and give even more fodder for Man United fans. But anyway, obviously, Newcastle United sort of having a decent season. I can't say they've been great, but I mean, they've been decent. In my preseason predictions, I think I had Newcastle 13th, and they're 15th in the table right now with 2 games in hand over two sides, over pretty much a lot of sides above them. And if they do win those 2 games in hand, which is obviously a much harder task than it's much easier said than done for a team like Newcastle. So, but if theoretically they do win, they could go away. They could go all the way up to 10th in the table. So, that middle of the table is very fluid. There's teams that can go up and down with just one win, with just a set of good results, a couple of good results, a couple of bad results, and you can see teams moving up and down completely. So, for me, I mean, Newcastle being 15th right now, it wouldn't be a surprise if they finish 15th. It would be a surprise if they finish 16th. It won't be a surprise if they finish all the way up in 10th and 11th. So I said, in my preseason predictions as well, I said the same thing. It won't be a surprise to me where Newcastle finish, but it is what it is. We've got obviously, Newcastle against Liverpool. Like I said, Newcastle's kind of become my second team. So every 36 match days out of 38, I want Newcastle to do well. I want Newcastle to win in their respective games. But the only 2 match days that I don't want them to win are when they play Liverpool at St James's Park and when they play Liverpool at Anfield. So today is one of those days, unfortunately, where I cannot let my secondary loyalty for Newcastle United come in the way of what I actually want, which is a Liverpool win. But speaking of Liverpool FC, so a couple of things here. Well, before I do get into sort of the team news, speaking of Liverpool FC, we've had news obviously from the British government saying that the city of Liverpool will be moving into Tier 3 along with a lot of other areas. Newcastle will be moving up from Tier 3 to Tier 4. Most of England's moving up from Tier 3 to Tier 4. Those cities which were in Tier 2, which included Liverpool, are now moving up to Tier 3. So this means obviously that for the few weeks that we had fans, it was great for the club. But as of, starting from the next Liverpool home game, Liverpool will not have fans in the stadium. Neither will Everton. Everton and Liverpool were, of course, the last 2 teams to still have fans. And that's been done away with. So a little bit scared because Bobby Firmino's form often relies on the presence and absence of fans. So I don't know if this is Bobby's season done, but let's hope not. In terms of injuries, and centre backs. I mean, that's the biggest concern, isn't it? Um, yeah, Joel Matip. I mean, I was fuming after the last game because I genuinely think that it's time. Look, there's either something going wrong with the way we train, the way recovery is done, the way things are done at the club, or there's something wrong inherently with the fitness of certain players. Because Naby Keita, Joel Matip, I mean, these guys look like they're made out of glass. And I said this last time as well because you can't not like these guys can't play 5 games without wanting a rest or some sort of a break, or they either want a break or they break something, which not really ideal. Let's face it. Um, so Joel Matip, obviously, disappointing for me that he is going to miss. I mean, it's rumored that he'll miss a fair few weeks. I mean, I don't even know. It's potentially, he could miss pretty much the entire month of January. So I don't know how. I don't even know how. Um, I just don't know what the solution is. I just don't know what the solution is because it's not at this, like I said, at this point I'm wondering if it's the players or if it's the club, because you look at, okay, these guys, fine, they may be inherently susceptible to injury, but you look at someone like Kostas Tsimikas, who's not had a big injury history before coming to Liverpool. He's been injured twice. He's barely featured for Liverpool. I think he played at the Lincoln City game and maybe one other game after that, I think in the Champions League. But that's it. He's barely featured. And he's supposed to be a backup left back. So I don't even get. I don't know if it's just these players or if we're doing something to them. Like it just doesn't make any sense. And obviously this week there was also news that we'd hired I think the head of recovery or someone from Schalke, who's supposed to be a really good mate of Jurgen Klopp's. And there was Schalke Twitter, and I follow the Bundesliga as well. So Schalke Twitter was saying that it's not such a great thing that you've got this guy because we've had a pretty bad injury history with him. So I don't know what's going on. Like I genuinely don't know what's going on. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what I don't know if the right things are being looked at. I don't know where the problem is as far as medical staff go at Liverpool. I don't know if it's the players. I don't know if recruitment's not doing a good job of looking at players who don't have as much of an injury history and can withstand the workload. Because part of it, I think, has to do with how Jurgen Klopp plays. The workload in training is quite high. A lot of players have spoken about it. So I don't know if that is also coming into play. And I don't know how someone from recruitment or someone from the medical staff assesses a potential Liverpool player, someone who's playing at another club. I don't know how they assess workload and stuff, and I don't know if clubs share medical data, and I mean it's just a lot of questions that remain to be answered. And I think that's the key thing here. There's a lot of questions that I have, and I'll get into it in maybe a couple of episodes time because I do plan on doing a mid-season review of our season, and maybe I'll get into more detail about it in that episode. But let's just get to the matter at hand. Liverpool versus Newcastle. Jeez, I have been driven so off topic right now. St James's Park, magnificent venue on a normal day during normal times. Unfortunately, no home fans, no away fans, and Newcastle, obviously being in Tier 4, is now subject to full restrictions from New Year's Eve. So that's not going to help either. Speaking of team news for Newcastle, they're going to be without Jamal Lascelles and Alan Saint-Maximin because both of them have been suffering the long-term effects of COVID-19 after having been infected a few weeks back. John Joe Shelby and Callum Wilson were not in the squad against Manchester City on Boxing Day. Joe Linton as well will be hoping to prove his fitness. And Ryan Fraser is probably not going to be playing according to team news. And Fabian Shaw, Federico Fernandez, they'll also be checked. And Jeff Hendrick and Paul Dummett have been ill as well. As for Liverpool's team news, Joel Matip is going to be missing the game. Naby Keita is going to be missing the game. And Thiago Alcantara is, it was announced that he was going to be part of the team. But let's get into that. Let's just talk about Newcastle a little bit. I think without Lascelles and Alan Saint-Maximin, that squad is significantly weakened, and any point they can get right now, they will take because that's your captain and that's your best player missing. So, and Jamal Lascelles has been, amongst the top 3 Newcastle players this season. So, Yeah, he's going to be a big miss at the back. And I know they do okay with Cher and Federico Fernandez as well, but in that three at the back system that they play, Jamal Lascelles is, I think, he's a crucial part of that. And I just don't think Newcastle have what it takes. I think they'll take any point they can get at this point, and especially through the festive period when games are coming thick and fast, they will try and get any point they can get. Um, we'll start with team news. Steve Bruce makes just one change to the starting 11 that lost 2-0 at Manchester City. Callum Wilson comes in to replace Miguel Almiron alongside Joelinton up front. So obviously Almiron gives you a lot of work rate, and I've been a fan of him since he was at Atlanta United in the MLS, and I really thought he had what it. I thought the move for Almiron to the Premier League came a little premature. I do think he would have been served better if he had played in a league that was less physical, because I do think he suffers from that. He's kind of like Minamino in my opinion, a little bit when it comes to physicality. At least I think he's better than Minamino in that sense, but I do still think he lacks, compared to the Premier League average. I guess if you can quantify that, I do think he still lags a little bit, and I think it would have done him a world of good if he had played in a Germany or a France before he came to England. I do think, like I said, the Premier League move came a little too early in his career for him. Obviously, when the Premier League comes calling, you're not going to say no. And Almiron has shown, signs that he can do well, but it's been a little hit and miss for him. It's been on and off. Obviously, he's struggled to sort of stay in the lineup as well under Steve Bruce this season, especially. So maybe that's also impacting him a little bit. But I do think he's got a lot more in his locker. But I do think this move to the Premier League came a little too prematurely for him. But let's start with Newcastle's lineup. We've got Karl Darlow in goal, one of the most impressive goalkeepers this season. Obviously, because he plays for Newcastle, probably doesn't get the attention that he should. But he's displaced Dubravka out of the starting lineup. So I think that's a big achievement, because Dubravka last year was, he was amongst the top 5 or 6 keepers in the Premier League. So to displace him is no easy task, but obviously he's filled in when Dubravka is injured, and now Dubravka can't get into the starting lineup. So obviously I think that's impressive from Karl Darlow. We've got Fabian Shaw, Federico Fernandez, and Sharon Clark, who comes in at centre back for Jamal Lascelles. Pretty stock standard lineup there. Nothing, no real surprises. Matt Ritchie on the left flank, DeAndre Yedlin on the right. Yedlin's sort of had an off season this year. I think generally he's kind of underperformed in Newcastle colours. I don't think he's been as great in Newcastle colours. He's had the odd moment, and he does tend to work hard. But there are times when you do feel that Newcastle can get a better right back than DeAndre Yedlin. Matt Ritchie on the left hand side, though, I do think he's been underused by Steve Bruce. I do think he gives you a lot in terms of work rate. I do think he can give you a lot in terms of attacking play. Defensively, a little questionable, but he's improved that side of the game as well, compared even to last season. So I do think he is an okay player. If you're looking to defend most of the game, which might be the case today. But I think if you're playing a side, maybe potentially in and around you on the table, I do think Matt Ritchie does give you a lot more. Isaac Hayden and Matty Longstaff. Isaac Hayden defensively good. Matty Longstaff sort of a box-to-box midfielder. Kind of goes up and down the pitch. Pretty impressive player. Obviously, I think I was there in the stadium when he made his debut against Manchester United and scored. So yeah, that was pretty special for Matty Longstaff as well. Jacob Murphy, Joelinton, and Callum Wilson. So Joelinton's probably going to be playing on the right-hand side, Wilson up front, and Jacob Murphy on the left. I'm not a big fan of Jacob Murphy, but I do think he's doing a job, and I do think he tracks back defensively. I think he makes up a little bit for what Matt Ritchie lacks defensively. I think together they can do a decent job. Now, do I think they'll withstand, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah on that right-hand side of Liverpool? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a long night for them. I do think that. But they can play well. They definitely can. Overall, I think the Newcastle United lineup looks pretty stock standard to me, especially the last few weeks. I do think there's no question if Jamal Lascelles and Alan Saint-Maximin were fit, then they get into the lineup pretty damn easily. So I think DeAndre Yedlin's out on the bench. Jacob Murphy's out on the bench. So I do think that's the case. But there are times when San Maximin needs to be carried a little bit defensively. So maybe Jacob Murphy can help out more than Alan San Maximin can. And maybe in this sort of a game, that's kind of what you need. But we'll see how it goes. Um, as for the Liverpool lineup, this is our lineup obviously for the final game of 2020. Pretty standard lineup. One change is that Nathaniel Phillips comes in for Joel Matip. So a lot of people expected Reece Williams to come in, but instead it's Nat Phillips. Obviously, with the festive fixtures coming thick and fast, you can understand you don't want to place too much stress on someone as young as Reece Williams. And Nat Phillips, to be fair, whenever he's been given a chance in the Premier League, he's done well. So, I mean, he totally deserves this start as well. Joel Matip is replaced by Nat Phillips. Another change is that Jorginho Wijnaldum is on the bench, so he won't be starting the game against his former club. Sorry about that. He won't be starting the game against his former club, and James Milner is coming on for his first appearance since he started. I mean, did he start the game against Brighton? I remember he played Brighton, but I don't know if he started that game. But anyway, it's his first appearance in the starting lineup, I think, since the game against Brighton. I think it was way back in November, if I'm not wrong. But anyway. Let's just get to the starting lineup. Sorry, I just got distracted there for a minute. Alisson in goal, no surprise, really. I mean, and I've already told you, Nat Phillips is in the heart of defense, so the rest of the defensive lineup looks the same. Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back, Fabinho, Partenic, Phillips in the middle, Andy Robertson at left back. We're going with an all-English midfield today. We're going with Jordan Henderson at the 6. We're going with James Milner and Curtis Jones as well. So a Brexit midfield to commemorate Brexit, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is official. I mean, Britain's membership of the EU is officially over on December 31st. I mean, that's the last day. So tomorrow is technically the last. I mean, in India, it's already December 31st, but, for Britain, tomorrow is technically the last day in EU. And January 1st, where Britain's going to be out. And to commemorate that, apparently Liverpool have decided to play 3 Englishmen in midfield, the Brexit midfield: James Milner, Jordan Henderson, Curtis Jones. I do think Jones deserves a start. I think he made a mistake, but he's been on a good run of form, and he's young, and I some of the abuse that he has got on Twitter, I've seen some of it. Undeserved. I mean, look, players have bad games. And I mean, Steven Gerrard's had bad games. Michael Owen's had bad games. Robbie Fowler, every great player who's played in a Liverpool shirt has had bad games. And I'm not saying Curtis Jones is going to is that sort of a player. Obviously, he could become one, but I'm not saying he is. But that being said, he's on a purple patch. I think you can't even call it a purple patch now. I think it's pretty much a purple wall at this point, because he's had a number of good games. And yes, he made a mistake against West Brom, but let's face it, the second half against West Brom, as a team, we were not good. It was a stupid mistake from Curtis Jones, yes, but he's going to learn from it, hopefully, and he's probably going to do much better next time. And if he has a good game today, I mean, that's football Twitter they've got pretty much selective amnesia, so no one's going to remember his error against West Brom if he scores a banger today. So up front we've obviously gone with the boys: Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino, and Mo Salah as well. No real surprises there. On the bench, though, there is a big surprise. Thiago Alcantara is coming into the lineup, so this is the first time we're seeing him since the Everton game. So it's massive. It is massive. I can't even lie. It is absolutely massive. I do hope he features at some point. Do I think he will? I don't. I think Klopp won't rush him. I think next game is probably when I'd expect to see him. I don't think he'll play this game. He is on the bench. Might play if there's a necessity, but I don't think he will. Kelleher, Wijnaldum, Thiago, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Minamino, Shaqiri, Origi, Reece Williams, Nico Williams. That's our bench. And I mean, pretty standard bench. 9 players, 3 subs can be used in the game. Like I said, do I think Thiago will come on? Maybe. Maybe not. Depends. I do think Shaqiri might come on. Who, by the way, Shaqiri's not been on the bench for a while. So, yeah, that's another thing. Shaqiri's hurt and Shaqiri's back. And, Yeah, hopefully he gets to feature at some point. We do need to build their match fitness up, though. Thiago, Shaqiri, and guys like that. So maybe a couple of minutes here, maybe 10 minutes here, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. Maybe I don't know. We might see something like that, but we'll see. We'll see how the game pans out. Now, as for the game itself, I'm predicting a 2-1 win. St James's Park, crowd or no crowd, it's still going to be a difficult place to play. Newcastle are not going to make it easy, but I do think they'll be a little more open and a little more attacking than West Brom were. That they're not going to put 10 men behind the ball. Newcastle, as defensive and as much as we like to stereotype Steve Bruce, they aren't that sort of a team. Um, I think if they could, they would attack. It's just that when they tend to come up against better quality teams like City and Liverpool, it just so happens that you don't have much of the ball. So sometimes, yes, they do play very insipid, very dreadful football, but there are times when they are quite brilliant. So bit of a hit and miss with this team, with this Newcastle team. I think they'll be more open than I think they'll be compact, but I do think they can be broken down easily, especially without Lascelles. I do think they can be broken down a little easily comparatively. Fernandez and Cher are still good defenders, but with Lascelles in the middle, I think that's a much better defensive lineup. Um, Attacking wise, without San Maximin, you have to say that's a lot of their threat that's been nullified. And I like Jacob Murphy. I think he's a good player, but when you've got to replace Alan San Maximin, it's a tall order for anyone. So really, it's you're looking at a long night if you're a Newcastle fan, I think. And I do think I do think Liverpool will win this game. I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think it might be. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win. I think Newcastle will get a goal. I think I think at some point they will get. I think at some point they will get the goal. I think and a part of me does kind of want them to get a goal. Like even like yeah, my FPL scores might not be great this week, but they aren't great anyway, so it doesn't quite matter. But yeah, but that's pretty much all I have to say about pregame. Oh my god, this thing has gone on for a long time. Jeez. Okay. This episode might be quite big, but let's see how it goes. Predictions, like I said, 2-1. Hoping for a good game. Hoping for a much better second half, and hoping we can play with the intensity that we played with in the first half against West Brom. But hopefully we can do it for 90 minutes this time. That's just my hope. Hopefully we respond really well. And yeah, I guess that is all I have to say for pregame. And I'll see you guys back again at halftime. Right, ladies and gents, it is halftime and it is still 0-0 at St James's Park between Newcastle United and Liverpool. And to be completely honest, it's been a very meh half. It's just not. It's not something that you would want to tell your grandkids about. Let's put it that way. It's not a memorable first half of any sort. Yes, there were moments, and I thought we played better than what we did against West Brom in the second half. So comparing halves, I think the West Brom second half was much worse than this half. I think this had moments on both sides, to be fair. Obviously, Liverpool, I thought we started out a little slow. I thought we were a little slow to get through the gears. I didn't think we were sloppy at any point. I did think, there's a little bit of tiredness that's there. I do think we're saving up a little bit of energy. Don't want to exert too much in the first half. Now, I'm not sure how much of a fan of that I am, because I do feel like we should exert in the first half, get the lead, and then you can relax a little bit later. But that being said, Newcastle made life difficult for us, and part of their tactics was to press. And I think what they've done really well is prevent shift in play from right to left or from left to right, whatever you want to call it. We haven't had too many of those. I think there was one really good ball which went from Trent all the way to Sadio Mane from the right to the left. But aside from that, I can't really remember something that. Every time we tried to switch play was difficult. Direct switching was difficult because every time the ball went towards one side, they would put pressure, and they had this really good thing where Longstaff, Hayden's been having a really good game, by the way. Isaac Hayden, Matty Longstaff, the winger on that side, whether that's Joe Linton or Jacob Murphy, and Callum Wilson, all four of them would press. both the person on the ball and the nearest three passing options. So it just made life difficult for us, I think. And you know, it's this is what they do. This is what Newcastle do. Otherwise, they tended to sit back. They kind of forced us every time they pressed to go further back, and that kind of negated our whole high line and trying to compress them into their own space. I think that's kind of how we've sort of won games in the past, and I think that's been a little bit difficult. Now, Newcastle's been more open than West Brom, and honestly, the Callum Wilson versus Nat Phillips matchup is not a good one for Nat Phillips, because the one time Wilson got a good run at Nat Phillips, he rinsed him. Let's be real. I mean, it looked like Nat was running in slow motion and Wilson was running at normal speed. He just left him for the dead. And if not for a really well timed challenge by Fabinho, it might well have been 1-0 to Newcastle at that point. Um, I really thought that was a very, very good indication of where I think Newcastle's threats might be. Joe Linton as well is playing on that side, on the left-hand side. I did expect him to play on the right because he's played there a fair few times this season. Jacob Murphy's on the right-hand side. He's not doing much. He's not threatening much, I don't think. But defensively, he is helping out a fair bit. As for our own players, honestly, Curtis Jones has been missing. I don't even know if he's playing in the game. He's had one, maybe two moments, but nothing remarkable, and nothing that you can say, okay, that was a standout moment for him. No, nothing like that. Curtis Jones has been missing this game. We need him to impose a little bit of his will. Against Fulham and against Tottenham, he kept finding those half spaces, which this game, credit to Newcastle, they've kind of closed it down well. Every time we've got near their D, every time we're in the attacking third, they've kind of closed down spaces well. They've put pressure well. They've not put unnecessary pressure. They've let a few people have the ball. It's a little bit of a risk, and you saw that with Robertson when his pass nearly found Firmino. And to be completely honest, if Firmino gets that first touch right, it would have been 1-0. It would have been an open and shut case pretty much. Newcastle a little lucky for it to be still 1-0. To be honest, I think Firmino should have finished that off. But really good saves as well from Carl Darlow. Let's not forget to give credit where credit is due. He had a brilliant one-on-one save against Mo Salah. Had another really good save of a header from Firmino. So really good play from him. To be completely honest, I don't know why he's not, and this is a little bit of a digression, but I don't know why he's not been looked at by Gareth Southgate, because I do think he's better than. I mean, I'm not saying he's better than Dean Henderson, but he's playing more regularly than Dean Henderson, and give him a look. It's not the worst thing in the world. He's playing regular Premier League football. He's displaced someone who is their normal number one keeper in Martin Dubravka. Just give him a look. That's all I'm saying. He could turn out to be good. You never know. So I mean, that's a little bit of my thoughts. I've kind of been intrigued by that, but we'll get to that. I do think we played well. I don't think we played badly this half. I just think we still have another gear that we can kick up to. And we sort of started doing that towards the end of the half. We started getting forward with more regularity, whether that was because Newcastle also felt they could get in the game, especially after that Wilson chance. And, they've had a fair few moments where they could have gotten forward. So whether that was because Newcastle started growing in confidence themselves and started to go forward a little bit more, be a little more adventurous, and that opened things up for us. Whether that was a knock-on effect, I don't quite know. But whatever it is, I thought towards the end of the half, we started to find a little bit of the rhythm. Our first touch has been really bad. Overall disappointing performances, to be honest. I mean, very average performances. Disappointing by Liverpool's usual standards. I think very average performances overall. In general, I think no one's really had a bad game, but no one's really had a great game either. So I can't, even Alisson had a couple of nervy moments. So I can't really say anyone stood out. I think from overall, if I'm looking at all 22 players on the pitch, I thought Isaac Hayden did really, really well. Defensively, he was solid. His pressure was solid. His interceptions, his tackles, they were really good. I thought Isaac Hayden did really well. I thought DeAndre Yedlin's looked a little more lively. I did think Yedlin could be a potential weak spot, but he's looked a little more lively in this game. I think there is some space that's there to be exploited between Federico Fernandez and Fabian Schär. I think there's a little bit of miscommunication in defense. So sometimes if Firmino found himself onside, Salah found himself onside. So there is a little bit of a possibility there, especially because I think Kieran Clark is not he's not in sync with the other two. I think Lascelles, if he had played, I think he would have been better in sync with those two, with Cher and with Fernandes. But I do think there is a possibility there. I do think we will take the lead, but I think, like I said, it's going to be a close game. I predicted a 2-1 win. I still won't be surprised if it's, a 2-1, but I think it's more likely to be a 1-0 at this point, the way the game's been set up. But obviously, first halves can be very, very different from the second halves. We'll have to see how that one goes. Last week is a case in point. First half absolutely different from the second half against West Brom. So let's see what happens. I'm not going to comment on performances until full time because as of now they've been quite average. No one's, like I said, no one's really stood out aside from Isaac Hayden. But yeah, I mean, other than that, nothing much to say. Hoping for a good second half. Hoping we can come out of this with 3 points. We need these 3 points because Manchester United's closing in. So we need these 3 points, and that game at Anfield against Manchester United in January is going to be very, very crucial at this rate. And we need, if we go in there with a 2-point lead even, which is how it is right now, I think psychologically that's a big advantage for us, and I think that's a big motivating factor. Not that you need too much motivation against Manchester United, but that is a big motivating factor because if you beat them, you go 5 points clear. So that should be something, because otherwise you're handing them sort of the psychological advantage, the motivation. If they're coming into Anfield leading the table and knowing that even if they lose, they'll only be down by 2 points and they'll still be in it, I think that's going to play into their hands more than it is going to do into ours. So let's not drop points where we shouldn't, and hopefully we can come out of this game with 3 points. But that is it from me at halftime. I will see you guys back again at full time. Right. It's full time and it's ended 0-0. And clearly, as you can probably guess, I am disappointed. Look, first things first, credit where credit's due. Fabian Schär and Karl Darlow had absolutely brilliant games. If it wasn't for Darlow acting like he was Manuel Neuer reformed, or some version of Manuel Neuer that we don't know exists, I swear we would have had the lead. I mean, he saved a one-on-one from Mo Salah. He saved the header from Firmino. And in the second half, again, he had 2 really good saves. So if it wasn't for Karl Darlow, we should have won this game. Any other keeper, we win this game. Even Dubravka, I think we win this game. But let's not get it twisted. Our performance was disappointing. This was not a performance as bad as West Brom second half. So I'm not going to be entirely mad the way I was that day. But there are aspects of this performance that lay bare the weaknesses of this Liverpool team, this and the West Brom game. Teams now know that if you pack the middle, Liverpool can't do anything, because right now, all our creativity comes from Trent and Robbo. And if you pack the middle and dare them to cross, if they cross 10 times, one of them is going to find its way in, and that one may or may not be defended. So they're just daring us to cross. They're just saying, we're going to pack the middle. What are you going to do? All we're trying is crosses and long balls from like defensive midfield. Henderson's trying to play people through on runs, which is very easy to track when you're in a 5-man defense. West Brom did it. Newcastle did it. And I'm sure more and more of teams will start looking at this as a way to combat Liverpool. And this is what happens. Teams figure your systems out. Teams figure out ways to play. Now, Manchester City may not do this, because they want to win the game as well. But for teams like Newcastle and for teams like West Brom, for whom a point against Liverpool is equal to a win, this is what they're going to do. And more importantly, and I'm, people, especially on LFC Twitter and, Liverpool fans that I know, they've been dismissing Manchester United so far. But right now, after this game, Liverpool are 3 points clear in the league, top of the league. We're going to go into New Year top of the league, fair enough. But Manchester United are just 3 points behind with the game in hand, which means if they win that game, the only reason they're second in the table is because of goal difference. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, whatever you say and do about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you have to understand, the man adapts. The man, there's 2 ways of looking at it. One, he doesn't have a good system. He doesn't have a stock standard system like a Pep or a Klopp to play. But the thing he does, and he does this a fair amount, he does play three at the back sometimes. I remember a game against Newcastle where he played three at the back. So he will come into that game at Anfield looking at these games, looking at West Brom, looking at Newcastle, thinking if we can do that at Anfield, we can very well do this. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into this game and why Newcastle got a point. Players, our centre backs are disappointing in terms of injuries. They're just fragile. They're made out of glass for some reason. And because of that, we've had to play Fabinho at centre back this year. Fabinho in midfield changes the equation entirely. Virgil van Dijk in defense changes the equation entirely. Joe Gomez, Joel Matip, whoever partners him doesn't matter, but Virgil changes the equation there. Because of that, we've had to struggle a little bit. I'm just all over the place right now with my thoughts, honestly, because this game itself. Okay, let's just let's organize it a little bit. Let's talk about the game itself. Second half, I thought Liverpool played well. Now, throughout the game, I thought Liverpool played well, but we always played in first gear. I just never thought we kicked on, and there was, whether that's because of fatigue, there was just no intensity. There was just at no point during this Newcastle game did I feel, aside from maybe about 5 minutes just after the restart, that this game was going to be raining goals. At halftime, I said, this could potentially end up being a 1-0 win. And I was hoping for a 1-0 win because that would mean 3 points. At the end of the day, I don't care if we win 8-0 or 1-0, it's still 3 points. And in games like these, it's going to be 3 points. But look, it's the way we played this game. We played well. Our patterns of play were really good. Our pressing was really good. But you have to understand, they never got out of first gear. And I don't understand what that is. Because I don't know if it's fatigue, like I said. I don't know if it's just, they took it too easy. I don't know if it was because Newcastle played well. And to be fair, they did play well. And the few chances that we got, the front three, what a dismal performance from them. Sadio Mane was absolutely invisible throughout the second half. Now, first half, I said, he was average, just like the rest of the team. Second half, he just became even more pedestrian, like that was possible. I didn't know that was possible. He just became even more pedestrian in the second half. Sadio Mane was invisible. Curtis Jones, good thing he was hauled off. Honestly, he had a bad game. Again, whether that's because of fatigue, I don't know. And I keep bringing up fatigue, but this is the festive period. This is how it is in a normal season. Now, you can say we've had a shortened preseason and those long-term effects are bound to carry over. And that's fair enough. But this is a Newcastle team that we should be beating. And this is a Newcastle team that's missing two of its best players. Jamal Lascelles and Alan Saint-Maximin did not even play this game. So I don't know what excuses are there. Curtis Jones, it was a good thing he was hauled off. Honestly, him and Sadio Mane probably had the worst games out of all of them. And then, of course, you had Jordan Henderson. He just looked fatigued. A lot of misplaced passes compared to his usual standards. It just didn't feel right. Thiago Alcantara came on as a substitute. Very, very happy. But honestly, I think more than Thiago coming, and let's be honest, like Thiago coming on changed the game because he gave us this sort of newfound energy which I didn't think we had before. So for the last 20 minutes or so, we looked like a different team. Some of his passes were really good. He was able to spot runs when they were being made, which was a big problem when Hendo was playing the six. Because there were runs in the first half and in the second half where you saw Salah making a good run, you saw Mane making a good run, and the ball just was never played to them. And I remember there was this one particular one where Firmino had just completely blindsided everyone, and he had gone on their blindside basically. And he was open, like one good through ball would have found him. Instead, Henderson or was it James Milner? I don't know. One of them opts to play it to the sides. It just made no sense to me. Like, yes, you have a game plan, but there is no plan B. And that is disappointing. Like, your plan cannot just be Trent, Robbo, cross, and hope for the best. Like, that just cannot be your plan. You have to have something. And Curtis Jones, very, very disappointing game. Last game, I said he made a mistake, but I thought overall he played decently. This game, just from start to finish, he was just bad. There's no excuses. There's no two ways about it. He was just bad. Curtis Jones was absolutely horrible today. Ran into trouble way too many times. Just tried carrying the ball through way too many times. He was not good. He was just not good. Henderson just looked fatigued. Rare bad game from him, so I'm not going to slate him too much. I do think it's fatigue. I do think if he rests for one game, he will be back. I would hope that next game he is rested, but I do think he will be back. And then, of course, you have who else do you have? Nat Phillips. This is the first game where I think it's his third Premier League start, if I'm not wrong. And this is the first game where you really saw what could potentially do damage against Nat Phillips. And that is pace. Nat is an old school centre back. And look, I like old school centre backs. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, centre backs have to be all beautiful and, elegant and ball playing centre backs like Virgil van Dijk and, all the modern day centre backs that you have. But what I will say is, he's an old school centre back, but one thing he does lack is pace, which will hurt us in a high line. And today we saw that with Callum Wilson, because Wilson's quite quick as a forward, and he nearly hurt us. Like I said in the first half, if it wasn't for a good tackle, he nearly hurt us. Even Joe Linton was faster. Even Joe Linton seemed to be faster than Nat Phillips, which is a worrying sign because Joe Linton is not league average forward. He's a little bit below average. He's had a better season this year than last year, but he's still not great. So it's a little bit worrying in that sense. So he doesn't suit our system. I think he's still got a career, maybe, at a lower Premier League club or maybe an upper championship club, Nat Phillips. And you know what, as a fourth choice centre back, I wouldn't mind him. Yes, there are better options, but I wouldn't mind him. Let's put it that way. But yeah, Nat Phillips, I think that's his primary weakness. He had a decent game overall. He had a good game overall. I didn't think he had a bad game. Just got exposed a fair few times in this game. That's all I think. So I think if Alan Saint-Maximin plays, I think he would have had a much harder time because Saint-Maximin would play on that left-hand side and he would try to exploit Nat Phillips today, the way Joe Linton and Callum Wilson did, actually. But Thiago Alcantara. Anyway, getting back to Thiago Alcantara, he just changed the game. He opened up the game for us. I've never seen a man pick out so many good passes in a single game. I don't think it's been a while. I think the last time I remember someone doing this and remarkably well was probably Mesut Ozil during his Real Madrid days. I think that was probably the last time. I don't think I've ever seen a midfield player just pick out so many good passes in a single game. Yeah, I think it's got to be either Toni Kroos for Germany or Mesut Ozil for Real Madrid. So you're talking a while back, and Thiago has just been too good. We need more of him because clearly this game needed more Thiago. This game needed more Diogo Jota. This game, don't even get me started on Diogo Jota, honestly. He should not have played the Midtjylland game. That one is on Klopp. I'm not even going to apologize for saying it. That one is on Jurgen Klopp. So yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out there. I've had my say on this matter. This game was crying out for Diogo Jota. This game was crying out for Thiago Alcantara. And when he came on, he did really, really well. Hopefully, we see more of him. Hopefully, we can build upon his performances today and we can try and break down teams who sit back like this, because teams like these are our downfall. On paper we need to be beating West Brom and Newcastle. Anyone looks at a matchup between Liverpool and Newcastle, Liverpool and West Brom, they're going to say that's a Liverpool win. That should be 6 points out of 6. Instead we've come out with 2 points out of 6, which is it feels worse than a defeat. That's all I can say. Like, it feels worse than a defeat because this was a chance for you to go clear. This was a chance for you to establish yourself. And I know people say it's a weird season. The Premier League's the Premier League, and there's quality all over, and anything can happen. A team in 20th can defeat a team in first, and fair enough. I accept all of that, but I think this was more down to, and I'm saying this again, I'm not going to take credit away from Fabian Schär and Karl Darlow, but it's down to our ineptitude as well. A couple of days ago, Tottenham Twitter was saying there is no plan B when they drew 1-1 with Wolves. It's the same for Liverpool. There is no plan B. We don't know what to do when teams park the bus against us. And it's not like Newcastle didn't. It's not like Newcastle even parked the bus completely. Like, they had their chances. They countered. They did. They tried to do stuff. And if it's a better team, they're going to look at this thinking this is a blueprint. If I'm Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm looking at this thinking this is a blueprint, and I can defend, and we can break, because Liverpool's weakness is at centre back, and they're not able to handle pace as well, whether it's Reece Williams or whether it's Nat Phillips playing at centre back. And I've got Marcus Rashford there. I've got Anthony Martial there. I've got Daniel James there. These are some fast players. And Rashford is in the form of his life. And I've got Bruno Fernandes is no slouch either. So you've got 4 players who can really hurt you on the counter. And the rest of them, even if you play a midfield of McTominay Matic or McTominay Fred, and you've got a backline of whatever, if as long as you defend, that's not going to be an issue. As long as you defend, you can always counter against this Liverpool defense and get something out of the game. Because if I'm Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm looking at this thinking this, the Liverpool fixture at Anfield, especially without the Anfield crowd, that could be 3 points. That could potentially be a win. So for me, this is a disappointing performance. We've shown our ineptitude against teams that park the bus. I think we did better than we did against West Brom, but to be completely honest, as a team, if I had to rate the performance out of 10, I'd say the West Brom one was probably a 2 out of 10, and this one was probably a 5 out of 10. But that's it. Like, at best, it was average. At worst, it just, I don't know, it was just inept. It was just unbelievably inept. And fair play to Newcastle. Some of their players really had a good game. Isaac Hayden, I mentioned in the first half, he did very well. Almiron did quite decently after he came on as well. Wilson had a pretty solid game, just troubling our backline. Joe Linton seemed to do okay. But for me, the standout performer was Karl Darlow and Fabian Schär. So, for me, that's just my opinion on this game. Disappointed, yes, because it's just 1 point. I guess you can be happy that it's not a loss, but if you're being realistic, if you're being really, really honest, this should have been 3 points. So disappointed, but we have to move. We have no choice. The season's going to be a weird one, but right now it's looking like a Liverpool versus Manchester United title race. And I'm all for it, to be honest. It's been a while since we've had a Liverpool United title race, and it's going to be interesting. That's all I'll say. It's going to be an interesting year. But that's it from me today on Raw Reactions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you guys for the support on the podcast. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, and wherever else, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts from. Should be available on most podcasting platforms. But yeah, that is it from Newcastle versus Liverpool at St. James's Park. I wish I could watch this game live. I would have given anything to have watched this game live. Unfortunately, that is not the case because of COVID. So yeah, maybe some other time in the future. And like I said, 36 out of 38 match days, I do root for Newcastle as well as Liverpool. The only 2 match days I don't are this one and the reverse fixture. So it is what it is. 1 point from this game, 2 points out of 6 from our last 2. Disappointed. Better performance than what we did against West Brom. Not great anyway. Hopefully we can do a lot better next time out. But that will conclude this episode. I will see you guys next time. Hopefully you guys are staying safe, stay well, have a happy new year, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.